Buildings built here after the war. It's the International Airport. Go to drive golf carts on the streets in St. Simon's. Flea market. This is Sunday.
45 you get.
Yeah, and you know, when the female turtle lays her eggs, she just covers them up with her flippers and swims back out to deep ocean. But before she leaves that nest, she will sing them a turtle lullaby, so they'll always remember the voice of their mother. But waiting for them in the shallows is Cora. She's the patron saint of loggerhead turtles, half fish, half human, a beautiful sun-kissed mermaid with flashing green eyes. See her in the tree? Anyway, it was destroyed during the Civil War. That were posted here before they left. They took black powder and blew up our own lighthouse so the Union troops couldn't use it. We had a gigantic blimp site in Brunswick. In fact, we had 8 blimps out there, and the job of our blimps was to escort ships safely out to sea and to look for German subs that were all over the coast. Let me, the German submarine, the U-boat 123. Within the pre-dawn hours, she had torpedoed both the S.O. Baton Rouge and the S.S. Oklahoma, big oil tankers taking oil to sea. We brought the survivors to our Coast Guard station, but we lost 22 men that day. The war was no longer over there. The war had come home to Georgia. And so it was praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. The men went off to fight and the women went into the workforce. You know what the Liberty ships were? They were the little workhorses of the war. They took supplies in both the European and Pacific theater. 16,000 people moved to the area to work at on those Liberty ships. Certainly those fighting the war gave the most, but those left behind, they were living off ration tickets and what they could dig out of the backyard, and Liberty Shipbuilding paid money, and so everybody wanted a job. Years ago, before the first Europeans ever came to this area, and the first Europeans were the Spanish. They say nobody owns this land, it is debatable land, we need to get up there and claim it for Spain. They send missionaries to build missions up here. They built 5 of them in the area of the ship and put some kind of settlement and another fort between my new colony of Georgia and St. Augustine. He goes of the Methodist denomination to preach under the oak trees. He gets a mighty fort built at the north end of the island. He gives everybody inside the walls of the fort a little plot of land where they can build a house. And he gets 900 soldiers moved there. He decides to do a preemptive strike on St. Augustine. Well, he marches down there, and despite shelling that fort for 28 consecutive days, he doesn't make a dent in those thick coquina shell walls.
1742.
In this malaria-ridden marshland. And on the horizon are seen 50 Spanish ships. And they have 2,000 men on them. The next day, they march up towards Fort Frederica. And they actually engage with the British at a place called Gully Hole. The final battle is fought right here in this marsh. And against all odds, Oglethorpe is so outnumbered, but against all odds, Oglethorpe's men win. Just a new start in the new world. Well, it was anything but a good start. because 1/5 of them actually perished the first year of malaria, heat exhaustion. And so now they write back to all of their kin and they say, you should have seen us. It was our finest hour, for we defeated the Spanish in what has become known as the Battle of Bloody Marsh, because the whole marshland ran red with Spanish blood. Is firmly in the hands of the British. The next period of time we had was our plantation period. And in the 1790s, we had 14 large cotton plantations here, and we grew Sea Island cotton, that fine Pima cotton. They use the steeple for target practice, and they chop up pews for firewood, punch holes for ventilation. But most disheartening was the fact that they slaughtered cattle on the altar. Phelps Dodge comes down here and saves us. They got their money from copper mining. I was very, very wealthy. And he looked down here and he said, you know, those people can't grow cotton anymore, but they have a lot of huge trees. And you know how he knew that? In 1794, when George Washington okayed the building of the first 6 frigates for our USS Navy, they came down here to get our wood. It was felled and sent to be the ribs of the USS Constitution. And you know, the ribs on that ship are 7 inches apart. Every 7 inches you got another rib. And that was so tenacious because our wood is so, you know, cohesive that's why the cannonballs were bouncing right off.
Live oak trees. When they're young, they grow up straight, then they widen out, and then when they get really old, the trunk gets really thick.
That the congregants of this church feel as part of their outreach ministry to open the church and let you see what history. In 1884. He finally had it finished and then consecrated in January 1886. It's built in the Gothic crucifix form, as many churches are. And at one time in the Frederica River, where the sawmills are located, you would have seen ships that were bound all up and down the North American coast. They were going down to South America. They were going even as far as Northern Africa. And of course, they were taking timber to Europe. And he always said, when it's over in the end, we're going to flip that church over and sail on to glory. There are nails in the inside structure, but look at this. This is done in tongue of heart pine that's giving it this beautiful honey brown patina.
Never stained or painted or anything.
Heart pine because one cruise ship I was on, some of them called me afterwards and says, we were trying to tell the other passengers about that kind of wood. Is it hard wine wood? And I said, no, hard pine wood. Guess they couldn't understand. But as long as we've been doing the cruise ship, we got to keep you much longer because you didn't visit the